When it comes to salary negotiations, it's kind of challenging, even for very experienced professionals. It's that very awkward, uncomfortable position you're put in. If you're not dealing with a recruiter and you're doing it yourself, it's rough because now you have to negotiate with your boss. So you don't want to say anything that's going to tick him or her off, but you don't want to sell yourself short. You hear all these stories about companies that want to lowball, so then you're also worried, hey, are they going to just try to, give me a very low offer, and then what do I do? So here's some of the things to think about. And I'm going to do this within the context of the time we're in. Before or during the interview process, best thing is if you could tell what they're offering for the compensation. If you're at the offer stage, you've already probably went on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus interviews, depending on how senior you are. You met with a whole lot of people, maybe you met 10, 12 people. Throughout that process, hopefully, or you spoke to somebody and they shared a range. Oftentimes, companies don't give, we're paying X. They give a range. What happens behind the scenes is they know we have a range. Let's just make it easy. It's going to go from 80 to 120, let's say. And then there's bonus and maybe profit sharing, 401k, matching, benefits, vacation, all that. But let's say it's 80, whatever, to about 120, 125. That's kind of the range. They keep it a little open. And if you're aware about the range, they probably would ask you a little beforehand. If they're good at what they do, they would feel you out and not go to the very end and then hope for the best. Companies are all different. Some companies, they'll say to me as a recruiter, Jack, it's 120, that's it, no negotiation, take it or leave it. And they're not saying it because they're hard asses, they're saying it because they don't like the whole haggling. They think they're being fair. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but they think they're being fair and what the value is for that job, and they'll pay it. And they just don't want that back and forth. With those, all right, there's not a whole lot of negotiations. We'll talk about, there's some later. There's some things you could do that's not salary, but other things. Other times, they leave room. They could pay up to 120, 125, but they'd rather not. They'd rather get someone for 90, 95. They're going to kind of judge on a case-by-case basis, depending on the person. They might feel, we get a sense that someone really wants it badly, and I think we can get them for 90. Let's put out 90. Now, if you don't want that 90, you're like, what do I do? I think I'm worth more than 90. If you are, this is like playing poker because you don't know what hand they have. You try to tell their hand. You try to figure out, are there other candidates? Are there other people besides myself? Do I have all the attributes, the background, the experience that makes me perfect for the job and be hard to find someone else? How did they react to me? What was your sense? So a little bit you're going to go on gut instinct. And I try to be rational about people's circumstances. If we had this conversation 3 years ago, it would be much different. But now I'm respectful of the fact that it's hard to find a job, and if you do have one, you don't want to lose it, and you don't want to jeopardize it. So it's a balancing act. Let's take you have that 90. You may say, if I was in your shoes, say something to the effect of whether it's I'm dealing with someone in human resources or I'm dealing with the hiring manager directly or another personnel. Say, I really like this job. I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I enjoyed everybody I met. I love the company. I love what it does. I use a lot of your products. I liked this person I met with, that person, the other person. I have this skill, that skill, the other skill, the education, the licenses, the accreditation to do this job really well. However, I do feel 90 is a little lower than I thought that this job would be. I was understanding it could go a little higher. Now I understand that there are budget cuts, that you have to worry about the company's financial situation. But at the same time, I think you like to be fair to people you're bringing aboard without breaking the bank. So could we do this? I know you said 90. I was really hoping for that 125. Can we maybe meet somewhere in the middle? Can we do 100? And let's say you're comfortable with 100. You want to know ahead of time. what you're comfortable with and what your number is that you'll walk away from. So let's say the number you'd walk away from is 95 or whatever, or 90 you'd walk away from. Then you want to get a little bit more. You want to kind of negotiate it through, so that if you say, because what happens if you say, I want 100, they're going to then think, okay, we can give 95. It's so weird. You think that if you say, hey, I want 100, they'll give you 100. No, they say 100, they're in mind like, yeah, they really want 95. So whatever you ask, you want a little bit more. And that's what I'm saying. You find your walk away number, you want to make it high. You don't want to start with that. You don't want to start, I want 90, but you really may walk away from the 90, because then there's you want to give room. You want to start higher so that they could come down, they come down to it. So if you start, but you also want to sense the market. If you're asking for 125 and you're not going to get that, then they're just going to kind of blow you off. You may not want to push it. If you feel you could get the 100, then maybe ask for 110, 105. You can also say, hey, and give the reasons why you feel it makes sense. You can't just say, I want it. You have to give some, you have to give some credible information. This is what is paid. I've done my homework. I've looked at other companies and what they pay for this role. I've looked at a lot of jobs online that have salaries attached to it, and this seems to be commensurate with what they're paying out there. I've seen and heard from other people in your organization that they were earning, 110 for this role. So I'm just looking at what's fair and appropriate. And it's not easy to do when you're in the midst of it. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. So you have to, before you even do that, you want to, as I mentioned before, get a sense of what it is. What's the compensation range before you get to this spot, so you know what you're dealing with and you can start preparing. Then you want to prepare, what's the number that if I get and I just can't take it for whatever reason, you're going to walk away from it. What number you're kind of okay with, and then it goes to what you'd be happy with and what you'd be really love. You want to start with a higher number, knowing that they're going to negotiate down. And whatever number you give, they're not going to say, oh, okay, you want 125, done. Could it happen? Yeah. Chances are not. So you want to leave a cushion that's more than you want, with the idea, whatever you say, if you say 125, they're going to think, yeah, you really want 100, so we'll do whatever. You have to give that enough room so you can get what you want. So when they come back, they think they won the negotiation, because you didn't get the 125, you gave you the 100, but you were really happy with the 90. So you want to have your number where you're okay with. Let's say 95 is you okay with, and you're asked for 110, and they come back with 100. You're still ahead of the game. They feel they've won because they didn't have to pay the 125. You won because you would take 95, but you got 100. So that's great. Do you see where I'm going? It's starting out, getting a sense of what the market bears. You want to see going into it, as you know the interviews are going well, you want to get a sense of what other companies are paying. You find it out by asking, talking to people, looking at the jobs posted, looking on LinkedIn's job board, all the other job boards, asking around, Googling it, get a sense. If you look at Glassdoor and others, sometimes they're not perfect. They're not really that accurate. The best could be is people you know and you trust who give you honest answers. But a lot of times people lie about their salaries because they feel embarrassed. They feel whatever they're making might be low, so they're going to goose it up. So if you ask people what they're doing and they do tell you, the chances are more often than not, they're going to tell you higher what they're really making. So it could, and the reason I'm saying that, because as a recruiter, when people tell me, how much they're making, I know what they're really making because they're going to check it. So now they don't check. There's new laws in most states where they can't ask what you're doing. I'm talking going back where they would tell you and they're going to check, so they would tell you. So I would hear people saying, well, hey, John got 150 offer. And I'm thinking, no, he didn't, because I know I placed him. He only got like 110. So people embellish. So when you hear that, take it with a grain of salt. Do your homework, but take what people tell you with a grain of salt, and what's out there may not be completely accurate. Find out what you feel is the right amount that makes sense. Also, look at the time, the market that we're in, to see, is it make sense? Is it fair? Is it reasonable? Is it going to happen? Or are you going to blow it up? Do you have other offers or not? If you have a whole lot of other offers for more money, then maybe you could push it. If you don't have a lot of offers and nothing on the horizon, then maybe you want to be a little bit more, able to negotiate and be a little bit more open-minded. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but definitely ask for more than you want. Not too much that it's crazy, but enough that they're going to say, okay, and they cut it down a little bit so you have what you want at least, or maybe even a little bit more. If they can't give you a salary, you can always talk about work from home, vacation days, contributions to 401k plan, gym memberships, healthcare, whatever it is. You want to find out what other things. And you could even say that. So I understand that you can only pay so much. Are there any other things? Can I qualify for stock? Can I qualify for stock options? Can I get more vacation days, more sick days? Can I work at home 1 day a week or 2 days a week? Now, that might be the norm. So maybe you want to say, I want to work 3 days from home. Depends on how everything changes out. Then you try to get those softer things. It could be the title. Okay, if you can't pay me X, can I get a VP instead of an AVP title? That could be tricky because sometimes titles have the salary associated with it, so they can. But oftentimes with companies, you have a band within the bands. So you could have a VP, and a VP could go from 100 to 150. And I'm making up numbers, so 100 to 150. And SVP could be 150 to 200. So maybe you can get that higher title, but you still get the same salary because you're on the lower band of that salary band of that title. See, a lot of this, you're going to have to do the homework beforehand. If you're dealing with a recruiter, they could help out because they've worked with the company before. They know how much to push. They know how much not to push. They know how much they could pay, how much they paid others. They know about, hey, if you ask for more vacation, they're really cool to give more vacation. They're really awesome working from home. So they can give you the insight. It's a little easier. It's also easier for them to do it because then they could say, oh, you know what? Jack really wasn't asking for the 110. It was me pushing for it, trying to do my best for my client Jack and help him out. So they could kind of bear the brunt if it seems like a little pushy. It's not the candidate who's being pushy, it's the recruiter who's a little pushy on your behalf, and it's a little smoother when it's the third party doing it, not you. So the thing is, in this market, I'm being a little, if you hear my voice, I'm being a little bit more cautious because I want to be respectful so that you don't go in, guns a-blazing, ask for a crazy amount, don't get it, and then you're like, Jack, I'm going to kill you. What did you say? So take this with a grain of salt. I am trying to be a little bit more conservative than usual given the time period we're in, given that it's harder to find a job, given that there's a lot of hiring freezes, still a lot of downsizing, a lot of uncertainty. So if you have something, you don't want to blow it. And you can also think about this. What is the money after taxes? You have to look at your tax bracket because you could be pushing, but when you think about it, if you get that extra $10,000 is a lot of money, right? You get $10,000, but if you're in New York City and San Francisco, other high tax places, what is that after tax monies? Then when you figure out what that is it worth losing the job for that? So maybe instead of it's worth not really $10,000, it's really $6,000. And do you want to lose this job, this opportunity? You have a bird in your hand. Do you want to lose it for $6,000? And that's the choice you have to make. But I will say this, in this kind of environment, you have to swallow your ego, put it aside. I hate to say this, but I don't want to pretend it's not. You're going to listen to a lot of people who are going to say the exact opposite. No, you go for it. Ask for everything. You deserve it. No, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. However, I'm giving more of a cautious way of looking at this at this particular time. 6 months from now, it could be really different. And what I'm going to do with these Masterclass, boot camp, seminar, session stuff is to add to it. And then if things change, go back to some of these modules and then either delete it or re-edit it to go with the time. Because having advice that doesn't correlate to the time is worthless. And when people are telling you, giving you advice how to negotiate, how to ask for money, be careful. Because they're going to give you old school advice to fight and claw and scratch for every dollar. They're going to lowball you and F them and get as much money as you can because when you come in the door, that's where you get the money. And if you don't get it now, it's going to be hard to get 2% raises and get where you want to go. They're right. They're all right about it. They're right that when you come in, they're going to base future raises on what you came in on. And it's hard to get those big jumps once you're in. But you have to weigh the reality of the situation. Is it worth pushing it for the extra dollars and lose something when you may not have another job for a while? Now, if you have if you're currently employed, you have more leverage. That's different because then you have more leverage. Let's say you're employed and you like where you are. Then, you know what? You could push it a little bit more because you have a job to return to. So you're playing, if you're gambling in Las Vegas, so you're playing with the house's money. Because you're betting that, hey, maybe I could get a better job, more money, higher title, and you're worth taking the risk to push it because if not, you like your job. You're comfortable with your job, so that's cool. But if you don't have something to go back to, and you look at your calendar and there are no interviews on the horizon, that's a reality. So when people push you and cajole you and pressure you to ask for top dollar, say thank you, I appreciate the advice. You have to do what's right for yourself. And a lot of people are going to say, well, you know what? My ego and self-respect is more important. Well, okay, I respect that. But also, I would humbly add, well, your ego doesn't pay the mortgage. Your self-respect doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't put money away for retirement. And this is I mentioned this before, this is one of the value add that I'm doing, is that I'm giving you the real deal, the real life. This is not pretend. We're in rough times. And we can't act like it's not, because it's just going to hurt you. So you have to make these tough choices. And I would always err on the side of caution to the degree in that if you're in between roles specifically and you need a job, you want to get back on the horse. You want to get back in the market, because the longer you're not there, the harder it is to get back, particularly if you get older. As you get older, in my opinion, there's a lot of ageism out there. And older could be late 30s now. And it's not just they don't like you because you're older, because the money. They don't want to pay the money. They rather get someone younger who is cheaper, or put them in another city or state or country that's less expensive. So this is the world we live in. These are the realities. So when you're negotiating, you can't negotiate in a vacuum. You have to understand that these companies now, unfortunately, for job seekers, have the power. And they could say, hey, if you're pushing too much, we'll just wait. We'll wait for someone else who's cheaper. Maybe we'll put the job in a lower cost city or state, country. So these are the things, unfortunately, you have to factor into your decision making. Doesn't mean you have to just give up and take anything. You negotiate, you try. You give a good faith effort to negotiate. But when you negotiate, and a lot of people don't negotiate. I've negotiated thousands of packages. You can't come in there just, I want this, I want this, I want this. When you watch the movies and TV shows, that's how they negotiate. I want everything, I want this. That's not real world. Real world negotiation, you know what is real world negotiation? Everybody walks away unhappy. They're happy, maybe they're 10%, 20% happy, and they're unhappy 20, 30%. Because in any good negotiation, everybody gives a little bit. In every fair negotiation, everybody gives a little bit. They don't get everything they want. Sometimes you can. Sometimes the company gets everything they want. Sometimes the job seeker gets everything they want. But the reality is a give and take. And you have to find out what's more important to you. Maybe you don't get all the money, but you have more vacation time off. Maybe you don't get more money, but they have an excellent benefits plans, and you have family members that have certain illnesses that need it. Right? That's important. You got to look at all those. Maybe you don't get all the money, but you can get stock options, and that could be great. Maybe you don't get all the money, but they have a really great 401k matching plan. Look at its entirety. So let's just regroup, because I know I just threw a lot of stuff at you. Before you look for the job, you should probably get a sense of the market, how much they pay, and generally speaking, within your field. As you're interviewing, hopefully along the way, someone told you, or you should ask about the compensation range, so you have a frame of reference. When you get to the point where you're going to start getting an offer, understand the company might just say, here's the number and that's it. And usually they'll tell you in advance, this is what we do. And if they don't, you might want to inquire when that happens. If they don't give you the number you want, consider what number I'll hold my nose and take the job, what number I walk away from, what number I'd like, and what number I love. Let's start, and then judge to see. If you feel, hey, let's start with the I love, try it. But let them know you're open to discussion. You don't say, I want 125 and that's it, or I walk. Because they're going to say, F you, walk. No one wants to be bullied like that. You don't want to bully them, and the company shouldn't bully you either. You want to say, based on my experience, my background, what I bring to the table, my analysis of what other people who do what I do are being paid, I think I should be paid 125. That being said, I love the job. I love the opportunity. I love the people I met with. I could add a lot of value. I'm confident I could excel in this role. I think there's a lot of room for me to grow. I'm going to be mentally and intellectually challenged, and I really love it. So while I want the 125, I want this to work, and I'm open to suggestions. If you do that, that's great. If you have a counter offer or there's other benefits that I'm not aware of that adds a lot of value, let's talk about it. You see how that's much better than just saying, I want X and that's it. So what you're saying is, here's what I want the 125. You're giving all the reasons why you should. You're not just saying, I deserve it. You're giving, hey, this is what the market is paying. This is what my peers at other companies are making. This is what my research shows. And don't BS. You got to do your homework, because otherwise it's going to say, no, it's not. So this is what I'm finding out. Then you let them know why you're good. You reinforce all the things you bring to the table and remind them that why you should deserve it, because there's a job description with 20 points. You have 21 of them that you could do. You have the education, the accreditation, the licenses, everything. You hit the ground running. So that's why you feel it's fair. However, I'm a reasonable person. I like the job. I like the company. I like the people. I love to work here. I bring a lot to the table. It seems you guys really feel confident in me as a person that'll excel within your organization. And if the 125 doesn't work, let's talk. What else is there? I'm not aware of all your benefits and your plans, so come back with me and see what we could do to make this happen. Because you want to know, no, I want to make this happen. And that's a part, I say that on purpose, that's an important part of it. I want to make this happen. I want to make this work. Because then, if they don't feel that way, they may not go to bat for you. If they feel you want 125 and that's it, they may say to their bosses, because in big corporations, think about it, it's usually not that person you're talking to who could sign the check and make the decision. They got to kick it up the whole corporate ladder. So they got to go to someone else. And if they go up the ladder, they're going to say to that hiring manager, hey, what do you think? Are they going to take it at 120? If I give 120, will they walk? Will they not? Because I don't want to make an offer and they're just not going to take it and we wasted all our time because we really like this person. Then the hiring manager can say, well, I got a good sense they'll take it, because what he said to me is that I like the job, I want the job, I'm excited about the job, I can do well, I'm open, I'd work with you. So then that higher up will say, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. Then they'll speak with the other higher ups in HR and other people in compensation and say, okay, this person wants 125, but I think that's a little much. For the candidate, but maybe we could do 100, maybe we could do 98, plus here's a bonus we can do. We'll buy out the bonus you're leaving behind and buy out your stock options you're leaving behind and buy out whatever. So these are things that they could work with that aren't just the salary. They could say, okay, if you leave where you are, you may leave things behind. Sick days you didn't use, you may have unvested stock, you may have a bonus you're walking away from. So then maybe they could take care of that. So instead of just the salary, they'll say, all right, Jack, what did you get as a bonus with your last firm? Oh, $10,000. Okay, tell you what, if we give you, 100 plus we'll buy out your bonus, what do you say? Then you're like, all right, you know what? I'm not losing my bonus. I'm getting more than I wanted. Great. Now, a lot of times it's not as clear cut, and there may be a little back and forth. Now, in hot times, meaning for job seekers, I've had candidates will go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for a while, to the extent that it's just like I'm getting dizzy because it's just back and forth. But the companies realize they need the talent. There's not enough people for this type of job, so they know they have to pay. They don't want to pay, but they know they have to. So it's a little back and forth and back and forth. But the job seeker would have more. The applicant will have more power. In this instance, not as much, generally speaking. Not everywhere, generally. Everything's going to be different for everybody. So I'm just giving kind of a very general thing and listen to it accordingly. So you want to factor in the benefits, the 401k, the health insurance. What do you do about a bonus you're walking away from? What else are you walking away from? Are you going to leave things on their table? These could be all thrown in the mix. The best thing to do, you have a list and you put it all down. Here's what I want for the salary. I have a bonus. What are they going to do about my bonus? I have maybe money that hasn't been vested at the other company. I'll lose some of it. How much is that? So then when you negotiate, it's just not the salary, it's all those other things too. And then there might be certain things you want to do. It might be that you, let's say everything gets better and we're back in the office, but now you are taking your kids to school and you really love that and want to do that. Say, hey, I might sacrifice some money that I could start the day later. Or Mondays and Wednesdays, can I come in later? Whatever the case may be. They're trade-offs, because not everything is dollars and cents. There's a lot of trade-offs in terms of lifestyle. There's a lot of trade-offs in terms of what you're walking away from and what they could add. There's a lot of trade-offs that your old company didn't have certain things that the new company has that has value. I've placed people with companies that they would put money into a profit sharing plan, and they end up making tons of money in that. So maybe the salary might have been a little lower, but they made a fortune in the stock. So you have to look at it holistically. You have to look at the big picture. So it's going to take some work. So it's interesting because just at the time when you want to relax and say, I got the offer, thank God, you still have work to do. You can't just say, all right, now I'm going to go into it. Arguably, you have an even more or as stressful time to figure out how you're going to negotiate it, how you're going to work it out, how you're going to make sure you don't blow it up. But I think I gave you a framework in which you could start thinking about how you can negotiate what you ask for, what you don't ask for, putting a cushion in there to ask for a little higher. Think about all the other softer things, benefits, what have you, that have value, what you're leaving behind that they could buy out, vacation days, days off, coming in late, starting later, leaving earlier. These are things that maybe could be all thrown in the mix in terms of negotiations. So it's a lot. I know I threw a lot at you, and you may have to watch this a couple of times and think it through, but definitely I'll leave you with this. When this happens, don't do anything impulsively. Don't do things based on your ego. Don't do things based on your self-pride. Divorce yourself for that. The same thing they say, that's why they say lawyers shouldn't represent them in court. You get just too emotional, you can't think clearly. So when you're negotiating for yourself, it's hard to do. It's hard not to take it personally. You have to try your best to put it aside, write everything down so you know what you want to do, what you'll take, what you won't take, what you'll walk away from, what things you may lose by moving, what things you'll gain. And then when you talk to them, you're well informed. And you try to stay calm, casual. Don't take it personally. If they don't give you all the money that you're looking for or the benefits you're looking for, doesn't mean they don't like you or they're being mean or they're mistreating you. Sometimes they could only do what they could only do. And it's not you personally, it's business. When you're interviewing, it's more of a personal thing. Do we get along? Do you have the background? Do you have experience? When you hit the negotiation, you're in a different world now. This is business people negotiating with each other. And the question is business, not personal. That's what happens. So you don't want to take these things personal. Nor do you want to be personal against them, like show that you're angry or you think they're being mean or they're being cheap, because then it's going to disintegrate. You want to be very professional. You don't want to take it to heart. You don't want to lose your wits about you. You want to be highly focused on what you want, what will make it work, and how to move forward. And if you're in between jobs, it makes it tougher because you don't have as much leverage, and that's just the reality. And you got to keep that in mind as well. All right, it's a lot to digest, so definitely watch this a couple of times, and I hope this helps when you get to this stage. And the good news, if you're at this stage, it's good, it's positive. Congratulations, I forgot to mention that. Congratulations, all the hard work. You found a job and you got an offer. Yes, congrats. And you're going to make it work. Now that you know how to negotiate, you're going to make it happen.